Covering the ball, it's one of those key moves that the professional golfer does that most recreational golfers could do with a little bit more in their golf swings. If you feel like you're coming up and out of it through impact, stay tuned. This video is really going to help. Let's get into it. Welcome back to the channel, guys. Kerrod here at the beautiful Joondalup Resort. Before we get stuck in, as always, please go down below, click subscribe, click that little bell so you get notified of all the great content coming your way in the year ahead. Alrighty, in today's lesson, we're going to be talking about covering the ball. It's a principle that you'll often hear announcers on the TV talk about, and also something that you'll see the professional golfer does on a regular basis. It's also something that you'll see a lot of amateur golfers really struggle to do. So let's talk about exactly what covering the golf ball is, and then how you at home can implement that to help you with your ball striking. Alrighty, so if I set up to this golf ball and we were to imagine that I swing to the top of my backswing, covering the ball would mean that as we move down into the golf ball, by the time that we were striking the golf ball, our hips would be slightly ahead of the golf ball and the center of my sternum would be slightly behind. We create this sort of window from the center of my pelvis to the center of my sternum where the golf ball would lie between. And that's generally what we see with the professional golfer. That leads to a lot of compression and distance. Now, generally, on the other hand, with amateur golfers and recreational golfers, we would see a slight difference to that. We would see the bottom of their golf swing behind. We would tend to see the mass of their body too far behind this point, and sometimes even their hips. And that'll lead to these sort of back foot shots where you'll see the players hanging well back through the moment of impact and not really finishing forward and up on their foot. So first of all, let's talk about some of the reasons why this may be happening. Well, first of all, it could be conceptual. It could be for the fact that you as a golfer don't have an understanding that the golf swing is an athletic dynamic movement towards our target out in front of you. And in doing so, we need to shift our pressure and our mass towards the target so everything finishes in the direction we want to send the golf ball. A lot of players are under the perception that they need to simply just swing down and hit a golf ball down on the ground. And when you do that, your body's not moving towards the target, and that's going to cause you to not cover the ball as well. Secondary, a lot of the time, players, in an attempt to get more of a downward strike on the golf ball, in an attempt to get this compression that they hear about, this shaft lean, this angle, getting a divot in front, they tend to place the ball too far back in your stance. And this is one of the big issues that we see of a lot of recreational golfers, and it causes them to actually do the opposite to what they're trying to do. So in this video here, we're going to elaborate a little bit more on that and show you where the ball position should be so you have an optimal chance of actually covering that golf ball. So if I, for example, was to set up with this stick in the center of my stance, let's assume that this was beneath the center of my pelvis and also beneath the center of my sternum. Now, covering the ball, as we discussed earlier, would be when the hips are slightly forward, or the center of the hips are slightly forward of the ball, and the sternum is slightly behind. However, if we start with the ball position too far back, what happens is impact, in reality, if we look at all the best golfers in the world, is actually further in front. So what happens with the player who positions their golf ball too far back in their stance, they'll shift forward thinking they're doing the correct thing, but you can see the actual center of my pelvis and the center of my sternum is too far in front, and that gets the golf club moving on too steep of a downward attack. The shaft will tend to get too steep, and as a result, what happens is the body then reacts by jumping up. You'll find the upper body backs up and out of it, and we'll lose these angles coming into the ball, leading to that bunched up look and a lot of thin shots down the fairway that kind of look like this through the ball. Not much power through the golf ball, and as you can see, definitely no divot as a result. So when we're looking to get this optimal covering of the golf ball, if you're a player who's struggling to take divots, well, this is key here. We need to get ball position correct first of all. So general sense of reference, if we can get a short to mid iron, so let's say I've got an 8 iron in my hand now, I want a comfortable club head distance between my lead foot and where that ball would be positioned, and we're using this yellow stick down on the ground as a reference for that. From there, as I set up to it, ideally what we would like to see is our left ear on top of that point. The reason we use our left ear is that as a reference for our upper body, and generally by this stage here we can see that we've got a little bit more weight on the lead side. That helps with the dynamic movement of the swing, but is also going to encourage you to compress the golf ball. What we see with the best players in the world, as we were discussing before, is they have this movement from the top of the swing down into the ball. And if we have that ball too far back, you've got nowhere to go. Your body's going to react and jump out of it, and you get that bunched up look. So starting with the ball position a little bit further forward is going to be an imperative step to help you get a little bit more of that compression. So once we get this ball position a little bit further forward in the address position, we want to keep our head relatively stable to the top. If you drew a circle around my head in its address position, as I swing and turn to the top, we want to keep that head relatively centered. As we move down into the golf ball, the lower body would shift. The head would move down and forward slightly. And as we make impact, we would want to get the center of that pelvis slightly in front and the center of the sternum slightly behind. We create this little window where the golf ball would be situated in, and that right there, that is covering the ball. So what we want to do is we want to start off with a couple of small swings, just getting a sense. Starting off with checking the ball position, weight a little bit further forward. Let's do some little half swings down there. So that one, as you can see, ball contact first, divot second. My hips and everything was moving forward. My upper body was extending and finished nice. And once you get a feeling at a slow speed, what you want to do is you want to gradually build that up. If you're someone who has had this ball position too far back, you've been jumping out and away from it, you've been trying to scoop, well, this is going to feel a little bit different. After we've done that, once again, check your ball position, weight forward. From here, we're going to add a little bit more speed. Let's see how we go. So that one there, that was a full 8 iron, came off with a lot of power, and you can see once again, relative to where the ball was situated at address, we took a nice little divot after. That right there, that is compression, and that is covering the golf ball. So if you're a player who is struggling to get this sort of divot after the golf ball, you feel like your body's jumping out, there's a good chance you're doing one of two errors. You're either got too much of an intentional hit down at the golf ball and you're not moving towards the target, or secondary, your ball position's too far back in your stance. And if it's too far back, you're going to lose the angles because your brain is going to work overtime to try and make sure you're not going to dig that golf club into the ground. So try these principles out. Let's get that golf ball a little bit further forward at address and get the feeling of the hips and upper body moving towards the target and finishing tall when you finish. So I hope you've enjoyed today's video. If you've got any questions, as always, please ask me below. But until next time, I'm Kerrod. Thanks for watching.